And in answer, they say, like most baseball pitchers, a unanimous California Supreme Court gave Mr. Bonds a free pass in its interpretation of the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act. The court held that although persons, once they are married, are in a fiduciary relationship to one another, the same confidential relationship does not exist before marriage. As to the fairness of the agreement, the court concluded that substantial evidence existed that Son Bonds voluntarily signed the agreement and that she had ample opportunity to get independent legal advice and that it was not their duty to protect her interests. So, this is serious stuff. Okay. Well, so now we have the marriage, we have the prenuptials, we have all that. Then we have this idea of termination of marriage. Termination of marriage. There are different ways you can terminate a marriage. Divorce, and there's something else called an annulment. An annulment. An annulment is a declaration by a court that a purported marriage does not exist and never existed. It never existed, the marriage. Why? Because of some defect present at the time of the marriage ceremony. Now, annulments are really important because they have a major impact on the parties involved. If you are annulling your marriage, that means you have no obligations to the other person because the marriage never existed. Now, what do you have to do in order to prove an annulment? You must document either mental or physical incapacity at the time of the marriage, or false statements of fact, or false inducements, fraud, bigamy is another reason for annulment, or mental incapacity. So according to the law, only an innocent victim has the right of annulment. Bigamy, mental incapacity, physical incapacity. So, what are we talking about here? Well, if you remember, and this is probably before your times, Britney Spears annulled her marriage to Jason Allen Alexander, who was a boyfriend from her hometown in Louisiana, who she married at 5:30 in the morning in Las Vegas. She annuls it a couple of days later. Actually, it was 55 hours later. And the court agreed to the annulment, and her excuse was she was drunk out of her mind and didn't even know she got married. Dennis Rodman and Carmen Electra, same thing. If you guys have been watching that special on ESPN, he marries Carmen Electra. He then gets an annulment saying he was drunk out of his mind, which Dennis Rodman was drunk out of his mind a lot, so I don't know how they can tell when he was drunk and when he wasn't. And he got the annulment. Now, why Carmen Electra would have married Dennis Rodman, I don't even quite understand, except for maybe the money. So, annulment. The other approach to dissolving a marriage is divorce. Divorce. And the divorce is termination of a marital relationship by court judgment. Now, unlike annulment, divorce recognizes the legitimate prior existence of a valid marriage. Now, this whole institution of divorce has changed dramatically even during my lifetime. So traditionally, states only permitted divorce for what they referred to as an innocent spouse from, quote, a guilty spouse. So in other words, in order to get a divorce, you had to be able to show fault, because marriage was so important that they would not invalidate a marriage unless you could show fault and show that you were an innocent party. Now this whole idea of fault and the fault basis for divorce still is in effect in some states. But in most states, we have what's referred to, and Ohio has this too, no-fault divorce. So you don't even have to show a reason for the divorce. You can just say irreconcilable differences. That's it. And you can get a divorce. Now, even in a state that has no-fault divorce, the idea of an innocent spouse can be important. An innocent spouse can benefit through the uneven distribution of property and support. So while you don't need it, and you don't even have to show it to get the divorce, if you do show you're an innocent party and you were married to a guilty party, it can affect later parts of the divorce proceeding, which is the distribution of property and the provision of support, or what we'll refer to as alimony. Okay. Let's hold it right here. Where are we in time?